Hey guys, Jenkins Dota here, bringing you another Dota 2 video on behalf of Pvgna.com, and this is part of the Offlaning with Bristleback in 7.06 video series. And in this video, I'm going to be explaining to you a little bit of the things that I think are important when it comes to team fighting on this hero. So I am in a practice lobby, so bear with me. I wanted to cover all bases, so I'm going to be doing a lot of hypotheticals here and not really, showing you a replay or anything like that, because every team fight's going to be different, and I kind of want to cover all bases. So first and foremost, if you're in a fight, if the fight has actually already started, what do you do on this hero? Well, obviously we know how Bristleback works. If you're facing away from people, you take less damage. Look at this guy, he's hitting me, that hurts. I face away, basically does nothing when he hits me, basically nothing. So very, very important that you are facing away from heroes. And I know it can be very tempting to hit people with goo and to actually be very aggressive. So in what case should you actually be aggressive? So if I spawn two enemies here, and let's say the enemy team is committing to a fight, so I'm gonna go ahead and level these guys up too. So if the enemy team is committing to a fight, you basically want to be facing away from almost anybody that's hitting you. One thing that I like to do in a fight is I consider who a viable target is. Who can I actually be a major nuisance to by running at them and slowing them down? Usually it's supports. Usually I'll run it like a Crystal Maiden or a Rubik or something like that, and I will actually use my nasal goo on them, and I will face them, and I will try to position such that their team, so pretend this acts as a Rubik or something, I'll try to position such that their team is behind me. I will be constantly spamming out quills, and I will be, essentially trying to negate all the damage that is being done to me while focusing my right-click DPS on a target. Sometimes that's not always possible. Sometimes you're just getting very heavily focused, and your primary focus needs to be on just facing away from people and not actually right-clicking people. That's one thing that I really need to stress on this hero, is if you aren't sure, if you feel in any danger whatsoever, face away from people. You want to get that 66 or whatever percent EHP bonus. It is absolutely insane. So really what you want to do is people are going to be trying to get in front of you, and you just want to be, kiting them around, and don't even turn to goo them. Don't even do that. Like if there's multiple people hitting you, do not turn to goo. Yes, it gives you stacks of warpath. Yes, it makes them take more damage, but it's not worth it because you might get stunned facing the other direction. Make sure that you are facing away from people. Of course, like I said, if you can chase a single support and keep the enemy team behind you, but if the support is facing his team, so if his team is over here and the support is over here, this is bad. What's going to happen is I'm going to get stunned this way, and then they're going to kill me because I'm facing them. Essentially, Bristleback's just a regular hero if that happens. So you need to make sure that only hit somebody during a fight when the enemy team is committing. Only hit them if you can do it while facing away from their primary damage dealers. So if this guy was a Rubik, I wouldn't go for him right now. I would just go in and try to spam quills as much as I can. If they're not focusing, maybe I'll get in there and I'll just start whacking them, and then they'll be like, oh, this guy's doing damage, now we have to focus him. And then I'll run away, and then they'll run away from me because nobody wants to chase a Bristle, and then I'll turn around. And it's kind of this game of cat and mouse. You need to try to make sure. Bristle has one of the fastest turn rates in the game. Look at him, it's crazy fast. So you need to make sure that if there's a stun coming to you, turn away from it. So that way the enemy team has to position in front of you. They have to walk all the way past you, and maybe in that time you can actually start, the stun duration will elapse, and then you can continue running away. But it's essentially this game of cat and mouse, where you are just kind of like, you're focusing them while they're running away, and then when they turn to fight you, and the enemy team's like, okay, focus this Bristle, then you want to turn and run away. So, and just because of how this nasal goo works, it's actually very easy to do that. So, okay, that's it. That's essentially how you fight. Keep your back, turn to people at pretty much any cost. If you can be greedy, you can use your goo on people and hit people, but your primary focus, that is a secondary damage source, that is a secondary focus on this hero, is your right clicks. You should not be focusing on right clicks unless you absolutely know that you can do so in team fight. If you are tremendously large, if you are focusing a very easy to kill support or something. But if you try to run after a Sven and right click a Sven, guess what? He's going to stun you, he's going to ult, he's going to hit you twice, and that Sven is going to do 50% of your HP and damage for free because you were trying to hit him. You need to make sure that you are playing the bait game when it comes to focusing a hero like that. If it's not like a Rubik or a Crystal Maiden and they're not totally away from their team, I would try to avoid actually right-clicking people unless you're doing the whole bait thing where it's like, oh, you know, I'm right-clicking you now, you gotta go for me. He goes for me, then it's like, okay, that's when I turn, and he realizes he's an idiot for trying to focus a Bristleback. So it's very easy to get caught in this trap of trying to right-click people. You get stunned, you're facing the other direction, and then boom, you're just a useless hero. Okay, so that's essentially it during team fights. Very, very simple stuff. When it comes to Solar Crest, it's actually very important that you consider that if you use Solar Crest on somebody, look at this. I use Solar Crest, I now have 6 armor, 0% evasion. If I'm facing towards this unit, and I use Solar Crest, okay, let me use Solar Crest, and he taunts me, I'm not only facing towards them, I'm a very squishy hero now because I no longer have 20% evasion, I no longer have 10 armor, I only have 6 armor. So instead of 49% physical resist, I have only 28% physical resist. So I've essentially made myself about 1/3 as tanky by using that Solar Crest. It's very, very dangerous to use a Solar Crest. So once again, exactly similar to the facing in a team fight whole spiel that I just gave you. Only use the Solar Crest if you absolutely know that you can get away with it without dying. And I would say that 90% of the time when it comes to actually team fighting, never use a Solar Crest in a team fight unless the team fight is currently like for sure being won for your team and they're trying to escape. So if they're all trying to run away and you're like, oh man, this guy's totally alone, then you can Solar Crest this guy. If they're all running away, if they're trying to escape the team fight, that's when you can use it because it's going to be primarily for right-click damage, and it's going to totally negate your tankiness. So that's one thing that you really need to consider when you're using the Solar Crest, especially when you have these particular items in your inventory. When it comes to tread swapping, do not tread swap in team fights. It is very dumb to tread swap in team fights. You tread swap to int, and then all of a sudden get taunted by this axe. You are 200 less HP and facing towards him. 200 less HP with the 66% EHP that comes from the back damage reduction. You're losing a lot of HP. It is not worth the mana that you gain to tread swap in team fights. I tread swap all the time on this hero. I do it to farm. It's very efficient to do that. I do not tread swap in team fights. It is too important that you are super tanky within team fights. When it comes to using the Lotus Orb in fights, it depends on the hero. It depends on the heroes that you're against. If you're against a Bat Rider, you want to like Lotus as you go in, and you know, kind of play super aggressive when the Lotus is up. When the Lotus is down, you can kind of back off and kind of chill out, and then go back in with Lotus up, and then all of a sudden, you know, you're super annoying. But one other thing you need to consider is Lotus Orb is actually incredibly strong at just dispelling things. So if there's a bunch of stuff that you need to dispel, for instance, the Silencer Q, which really annoys a Bristleback, you can hold it to dispel that sort of thing. It just depends on how the game is going. A lot of the time I just find myself being in, and then I realize that people are about to use spells on me, and then I use it like that, and then once it's down, I'll maybe use the Crimson Guard if my team isn't, or if my team is finally going in with me. I'll use the Crimson Guard, I'll disarm somebody, and then I'll, you know, focus somebody else. Essentially, in a team fight, you want to be as big of a nuisance as possible. You want to stay alive as absolutely long as possible, and understand that if you do die, your goal is to make it not worth it for the enemy team to kill you. It can be worth it for the enemy team if you act a fool and you face towards them and get stunned towards them, and perhaps you are Solar Cresting some other guy, so my armor goes down by 10, then it's actually much easier to kill you. It might actually be worth it to kill you, especially if your Crimson Guard and your Lotus Orb haven't been used. So make sure you're spamming out your crap at all times, and make sure that you're not using the Solar Crest aggressively unless the enemy team is essentially trying to escape. A couple of other things. One thing to consider is that once you get to the level 2 in Warpath, it's actually very hard to, so even with the Octarine Core, I'll go ahead and show you. So if I spam out the quills as much as humanly possible, there actually will hit a point where I believe it's 4, if I'm not mistaken. It goes between 5 and 4, maybe, okay, 5 and 6. Okay, so it goes between 5 and 6. So that's with the Octarine Core cooldown reduction, and you only have 6 stacks of Warpath, and 7 is the second level in it. So you literally cannot get to level, or to 7 stacks of Warpath with just Quill Spray. So what do? You viscous nasal goo things. But remember, you don't want to face towards people to viscous nasal goo them. You can Viscous nasal goo people, if they aren't focusing you and you want them to focus you, absolutely nasal goo them, because that's going to force them to focus you, because if somebody's super slow and you're really close to them, they're going to hit you anyway because you're the closest target. But what you can do is you can actually viscous nasal goo creeps. Viscous nasal goo things you don't want to focus, just to give you those stacks of warpath, and it's actually worth it because of the movement speed, because of the damage that it gives you. So it's actually really, really important. So I'll go ahead and go to this creep wave. So let's say these guys are like hella hitting me right now and they're chasing me. What I can do is, as I'm passing, you can see that I'm gooing and I'm not facing towards them, so that way if I do get stunned, it's you know, no big deal, because I'll be facing away from them. But I'm at 8 stacks of this warpath now, and maxes out at 9. So yeah, really, really nice stuff to do. Just make sure you spam out the viscous nasal goo on creeps. It's no big deal, and you know, don't face towards the enemies. You can see that I'm kind of bodying in super hard here with Bristle, and just baiting for my team. They're coming in hot, and mainly I'm baiting for the Invoker, which is Nusham. He was telling me to bait, and I'm just kind of trying to keep a distance where I'm not going to just feed the Aegis away, but they are tempted to use abilities on me. That's essentially the goal for me, and that's why I was kind of lingering there at the kind of the cusp of being in that fight. Also, one thing that I do like to do on this hero is that I like to try and cancel blink daggers of like Slardars and things like that. So you saw that I was quilling just as the Slardar was right in range, not necessarily anticipating them trying to get a bunch of quills on him, but more so to try and cancel that blink dagger. So constantly I'm just using the Lotus Orb on myself to try and, so as I was stunned there, I was actually trying to spam the Lotus on myself, just to kind of make it so they can't cast spells on me, and if they do, as you can see, the Silencer actually just silenced himself, which is not that big of a deal for him, but pretty annoying. You know, it's a couple of seconds, he can't do anything. And the Anti-Mage is not necessarily at his peak yet, but he's still, you know, he's still hitting towers with us. And I think just based on how huge the Invoker and I are, the Anti-Mage could basically have any items right now and be useful. But I'm actually using the Solar Crest aggressively there, just because there's absolutely no way they do kill me, and if they do kill me, by the time I come up back alive with that Aegis, they're going to, I'm going to have the Solar Crest up again, so it's not going to, I'm not going to have that minus armor on me. So you can see that I'm kind of just bodying in and trying to essentially position myself between my team and their team while my team kills the barracks. So that's actually something that people have done for patches and patches on axes, on bristlebacks, on any tanky frontline hero you can do that on, and you're essentially just making space for your team. People do it with Brewmaster too, and it's definitely like a super good play. I remember people actually didn't do it for many patches because there's so many shrines, so doing that was actually like incredibly bad. But now you can do it, especially on those top and bottom racks, because there aren't shrines behind the racks, so you're not running into anything that's, you're not running into anything like an idiot. So if you run in, you get a bunch of quills on people, they actually have to go back to Fountain now to take those quills off.